Kia ora, nā mai ki te whare. Welcome to the House. Ko Louis Collins aho. Parliament kicked off the 3-week sitting block this week with a particularly boisterous question time, which felt a bit more like a mat time at school. Speaker Jerry Brownlee was handing out telling offs left, right and centre.
And we're all ready? And we're all quiet?
I am.
So the answer is not acceptable. So we have no more of that. Questions are heard in silence. I thought there was an issue down here. No, just a minute. These little digs across the House are not acceptable, particularly from government ministers. Referring to someone by their first name is not appropriate in this House. Their full name, if at all. Just vote for your own colleagues who are holders and sons.
I find it laughable.
Please stop, and that barracking will stop like that.
Following the brouhaha of question time, the House moved to the relatively less exciting government business. The House's schedule of bills being considered this week is made up exclusively of committee stages and second and third readings. In other words, there aren't any new bills up for the debate this week. To speed up the progress of these bills, some of which are time-dependent, the Leader of the House, Chris Bishop, moved urgency.
I move that urgency be accorded to the remaining stages of the taxation annual rates for 24-25 Emergency Response and Remedial Measures Bill, the third reading of the Regulatory Systems Immigration and Workforce Amendment Bill, the Regulatory Systems Economic Development Amendment Bill and the Land Transport Drug Driving Amendment Bill, the remaining stages of the Sentencing Reform Amendment Bill and the Customer and Product Data Bill, the third reading of the Arms, Shooting Clubs, Shooting Ranges and Other Matters Amendment Bill, and the remaining stages of the Dairy Industry Restructuring, Export Licences Allocation Amendment Bill, the Social Workers Registration Amendment Bill and the Fisheries, International Fishing and Other Matters Amendment Bill. The real reason for urgency is the Bail Act amendments in the last sitting period. It took up a lot of time, so I'm not moving it with any pleasure, but it is what it is.
Now, even the government would probably admit that some of these bills that Bishop listed, while important, aren't exactly edge of your seat watching the debate interesting. There are 2 or 3 in there worth looking at though. Firstly, the Land Transport Drug Driving Amendment Bill. Here's Bishop again, this time in his capacity as Transport Minister.
Alcohol and drugs, as I think most members will know, are the #1 contributing factor in fatal road crashes in New Zealand. In 2022, they were contributors to 200 fatal crashes on our roads, and despite this, police have no way to undertake saliva testing for drugs at the roadside, and only 26% of drivers think they are likely to be caught while driving under the influence of drugs. So just reflect on that. 75% of people think that they are unlikely to be caught while driving under the influence of drugs. Now, as members will know, this issue of saliva roadside oral fluid drug testing has a interesting history. I think I'm right in saying this is Parliament's 3rd attempt at introducing roadside drug testing. The last legislation introduced by the previous government did not work, as there was no commercially available testing device that met the criteria. So we committed to solving this problem, and indeed that is what this bill does.
That bill will receive its 3rd reading this week and is on track to become a law shortly after that. The
Sentencing Reform Amendment Bill
will resume its committee stage and then move on to its 3rd reading this week. Minister in charge, Paul Goldsmith, outlined what it aimed to do during the first reading.
The Sentencing Reform Amendment Bill has 3 objectives: to ensure real consequences for crime first, secondly, to restore the principle of personal responsibility for offending, and thirdly, better recognising the needs of victims, particularly those who have suffered through years of increased retail crime.
The opposition aren't convinced. Here's Labour's Duncan Webb.
Now, there's 3 kinds of provisions in this bill. Some are pretty good. They're the ones that were taken out of the Labour Party's Ram Raids and Related Measures Bill. There's some that are pretty much doing nothing, and there's a good number of those, which, and then there's a couple which are actually quite nasty. But it's just, I really struggle with the minister standing up here and saying, I've come up with a cracking idea.
That bill will receive its 3rd reading this week. As part of urgency, the House will sit for extended hours in the mornings and evenings, including sitting until midnight on Wednesday. I te whakarongo koe ki te whare. You've been listening to The House, a program made with funding from Parliament's Office of the Clerk. Mātua.